What's going on, you obtusely organic octopuses? Welcome to this week's episode of Total Pod Mode. My name is James, also known as Mr. Bames, and I'm joined, as always, by the wondrous Will, also known as Hoodafunk.
How's it going, James? Good to be here for another week.
Yeah, not too bad, man, not too bad. Ready to go. We've got some cool stuff to talk about this week, man.
Yeah, I'm excited for what we've got coming up in store.
Listeners are probably wondering what that is. Well, let me tell you. We've got our catch-up as usual, and then we go into some gaming news where we've got some early access issues, but then some potential spoilers of a big title, which could be coming a lot earlier than I expected, certainly. And then we round out the news with a new announcement from Meta. New piece of hardware, maybe? Finally, curtailing the episode with Completionist Corner. What are we playing this week? Stick around to find out. But first, let's hit them socials. You can, as always, find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere else you get your podcasts by searching for Total Pod Mode.
We also post regular video content of our playthroughs, stream highlights, as well as the podcast on our YouTube channel, Total Pod Mode.
You can also find us on Twitter by searching for @TotalPodMode, all one word.
Or you can find me at Hoodafunk on Twitter, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/Hoodafunk.
And you can find me on Twitter at Mr. Bames, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/MrBames_TPM. So Will, I'm actually going to be a little bit unconventional this week and go first because I have no catch up this week because I've been away on holiday.
Oh geez, okay, well, I mean, that is a good excuse, I must say.
So the only thing I've been able to play this week is our Completionist Corner game. So I'm going to hand it over to you, man. What have you been up to this week?
So this week I've actually had a pretty productive week in terms of the catch-up. As listeners are probably aware, I've been working away on the Season 3 Battle Pass in the background. I haven't really talked about it too much in the last few episodes. However, I think that it's probably worth noting that with about a couple weeks to spare, I've actually finally managed to complete the Battle Pass.
Hey, you got there.
I started on about 80-ish% and managed to grind out those last 20 coins. And I earned most of those points in the Battle Royale Resurgence mode, which is a 3 or 4 player mode where you all land in at the same time, very similar to a regular Battle Royale. However, if one of your squad mates dies, a timer starts off, and as long as the rest of the team, or even one member of the team, is alive by the end of that time, the person will actually respawn. So it's kind of like last man standing, but you also keep coming back in so long as at least one member of your team survives.
Okay, that's an interesting mechanic.
You still get the gas cloud coming in as it shrinks, but during that section you also need to be battling other teams, and it's a bit more frantic than the Battle Royale because, as I mentioned earlier, you respawn coming in on your parachute again, so you end up facing off with a lot of other teams, and it's very frequent that you'll be losing your position because suddenly someone's parachuted into a building nearby you. By looting things and opening boxes, damaging and shooting other players, all of that will reduce the time it takes for you to respawn. However, I think around the sort of 10-15 minute marks to the game, the resurgence thing ends, so you're no longer able to get your teammates to spawn in after that timer. So as it comes down to the final few teams, usually around the top 10, the respawn resurgence ends, and then the only way you can get your team back is the conventional way, which is to somehow find $4,000, take it to a buy station, and then you click on the teammate you want to come back. And you can still buy them in like that, provided that the gas hasn't consumed all of the buy stations. But that's the only way you can do it after the respawn resurgence timer ends.
Okay, that does sound exactly like the Gulag then, basically, in terms of the mechanic. They've just
Yeah,
replaced
absolutely, yeah.
the Gulag with nothing. You just, so long as one of your teammates is alive, you come straight back.
Yeah, absolutely that, yeah. But that does change up the dynamic of it, and it also makes the games a little longer and a little more fun. Also, it really does put the pressure on you if you are the last guy in your squad watching all of your teammates' timers count down, and you're kind of sat in the corner of a room just holding it down.
Yes. How many controllers are going to be broken by people throwing their controller into the wall? It's like, I had 1 second left!
Yeah, that does happen pretty frequently as well. Because of that, you really do need to hunt down these teams. That kind of presses the urgency of not just killing one person and then moving on, but if you have started to engage with the squad, you really want to hunt all of them down. Otherwise, you just know that you're going to immediately lose your position to them as they all slowly land on a roof nearby.
Yeah, nice. So I imagine it gets really frantic as well. And this is probably exactly what you need when you're grinding out experience to complete a battle pass.
Well, the Battle Royale and the DMZ are definitely two of the best ways to earn experience points. Also, over the bank holiday weekend, we also got a double XP event, which boosts your battle pass, weapon, and player XP. So I was
nice,
just kind of
yeah.
coupling and making the most of that throughout those 3 days to finally push myself to the end with some days to spare.
Nice, nice. And what sort of stuff did you unlock with your battle pass?
Yeah, I got like a bunch of skins, mostly themed around the battle pass, which is kind of like a black and gold theme if you buy the additional premium battle pass version that we talked about earlier. So for that, whenever you unlock like one of the skins on the battle pass, you also unlock a black and gold variant, and one of the default operators that you unlock straight away on the battle pass, I wasn't a big fan of his skin, so shamelessly I actually had to get to 100% to unlock a different skin for him, so now he's playable to me because
Nice.
yeah, I wasn't vibing with his look before.
Yeah, Fashion Souls.
Fashion Souls, exactly that. Yeah,
Call of Fashion?
Cool of Fashion for sure.
Call of Fashion, yeah.
I've also kind of neglected to mention that I actually got a cheeky 3 wins in one day on that mode, with actually 2 of those times being me carrying the team.
Nice. Was that with the boys or that was randoms?
It was randoms.
Probably best it was randoms because otherwise you'd just be brutally calling out the boys. Like, well, I had to fucking carry them for 2 games.
Yeah. But I did manage to win those, carrying the team. I think one game ended up with 8 kills, one game ended up with 7 kills. So yeah, I was feeling pretty good. I don't know if that is a large amount of kills to get for Resurgence, because as I say, it can be really quite fast and furious. And as you got people parachuting in the whole time throughout the game until the very last few minutes, you just never know if someone's going to immediately land on you and start attacking you, meleeing you, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you've got a nice gun, become a target.
Absolutely that. And when you're parachuting in and you've got a lot of your team are still on the ground and you're landing in with a pistol, you've really got nothing to lose at that point. So you might as well, I mean, sometimes you get someone that will just try and land straight on top of you and then just furiously melee you to death.
Yeah.
Oh, I got a few times, but not most of the time, thankfully. Yeah, no. You got to keep a little SMG on you for stuff like that.
Exactly. You only got because your back was sore from carrying.
I like it. Yes, I'll take that. In other catch-up news this week, I also managed to finally get my ass into gear and play a little RE4.
Oh, it's been a minute.
Yeah, it really has. So I can't remember where we actually got up to on the podcast. Did I?
I think it was you just beaten El Gigante.
Okay,
so you're talking about Doggo.
That was right. So I've progressed through that area now. I met up with Chief Mendez, who is the big cheese, the big village cheese. So you have the big barn fight with Mendez where he kind of starts splitting in half and he gets all sort of crazy tentacle daggers out his back and stuff.
Yeah, Centipede Boy.
Yeah, that was a good fight. It was very similar to the original one with a slight kind of shift in the way that the arena worked, but you still had similar mechanics in terms of if you climb up the ladder, you have to dodge the swiping attacks that he does. You can jump down to avoid them. You can also parry certain stabby attacks that he does. And there are other ones that you need to dodge. You can't parry every single attack. The sweeping ones you need to dodge, and the kind of the pokies you can parry. And once again, that new dynamic in the game is proving to be really fun and really effective as well. I've made sure that throughout the game, consistently, the knife is my kind of number one upgraded thing in terms of durability.
Yeah, given what you've said and what I've seen of gameplay live, I can believe it. The parry mechanic looks really fun.
Yeah, it's great.
So you want your knife durability to stay up so that you can keep doing it for as long as possible.
Along the way as well, in that game, I've noticed that you start to unlock a few more aesthetic things for your characters. So, as I discussed, I think the first time we brought up this game, there is a fair few different skins for the characters. All of them are pretty wacky and outrageous, which is cool. But there are also accessories for the characters. Leon gets like a pair of shades. Ashley can get like a pair of red sunglasses, or you can change her hair color and things like that. So there are kind of minor appearance changes as well as costumes in the game. So I've been having a little fun with finding those. You can find a lot of them just throughout the game by exploring.
Resident fashion,
yeah. This has been a little fashion week.
What's your fashion?
So you're fighting Mendez. You've got phase 1, where he's a centipede boy. Do you still have phase 2, where he swings through the rafters?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he splits in two after you kind of shoot him in half. He has an exposed eye kind of on the back of his neck.
Yeah, and you shoot it with a rocket launcher and he's dead in one shot. Yeah, I know how this guy goes, man. Yeah. I got it.
Do you even
don't
get
even need to hit the eye.
rocket
You
launcher
can just
that
hit him in the belly. Oh, I did.
You did? Okay. Oh, yeah, you must have bought it early. That because I was just thinking, yeah, I never really think about the rocket launcher until you get the free one in the castle. That's the one that I tend to use. So
Yeah, because that swinging through the rafters is awful. He's too quick and too unpredictable. Is it the same in the remake?
He is quite unpredictable, but at the same time, I think the shooting mechanics are easier in this one. They're more conventional in terms of a modern sense, so
Yeah, that's true.
it is easier to hit him. I think I managed to do the majority of this boss fight with the Red 9, actually, and it was only when I started to get a
Nice.
little low on health items that I thought, I'll switch to the shotgun. I think I fired once on the shotgun, and that ended the phase 2, so awesome.
Nice. And can you parry any of phase 2 as well? That probably helps a lot if you can.
There are bits that you can parry, but again, I think there's also bits that you have to dodge, so you can't just be reliant on pressing the parry button every time that you think you're about to get attacked. Sometimes you do need to wait, because bringing that knife up will delay your dodge, because as he needs to put the knife away, you know? So after beating Mendez, you pretty much very shortly after there move on to the castle. You, much like the original game, use his eyeball to plug it into a wall, and that gets you straight through.
Yeah, just mush his eye against the wall.
At that point, people who remember the original game, you also have a brush with Ada along the way, and that scene is done a lot better. The interaction between Ada and Leon, you can see that they're trying to depict much more of a progression from Leon from Resident Evil 2 up to now. Obviously, the start of the game explains some of the time between, but the way that they interact with each other now is kind of like on a different level. And they have a little cool, tussle. They're not quite wrestling, what do you call it? Like, kind of like gun kata.
Dry humping?
I don't. No, gun Carter. Like, I've just got my hand like in the shape like a gun. I can't say those words without
Gun
like.
hunter.
What? No, gun Carter, dude. You need to watch Equilibrium. Everyone, stop listening to this podcast and go watch Equilibrium, and then come back to the podcast and listen to the rest, and then go back and listen to it twice. Yeah, covered.
I rated 5 stars while you're at it. What?
Yeah, 5 stars, comments, reviews, all the things. Thank you, please.
So the castle?
So the castle. So we worked our way into the castle. One of the more memorable bits in there is you're fighting the claw guy, as you'll remember from the first game. The guy that
the blind
was
dude.
blind. Yeah, has the claw hands. They don't give you a bell in this fight, or at least I didn't encounter one. So you're mostly, again, because the controls are better, it's slightly easier to hit his weak spot and maneuver around him. But that was quite a challenge. I got beheaded several times during that, mostly due to the fact that I think what the game wants you to do is you encounter him, he chases you down a bit of a corridor, and then you appear in the arena. Whereas in the original one, it was pretty much like he just emerges out of a small room, and then you have the arena.
Yeah, because it's as if he's locked up, isn't he? He's like in a cell almost.
It's exactly that. It's still like that, but the corridor to get to him is a little longer. And for whatever reason, I didn't make the connection that I was supposed to, I guess, run away and lure him back into the arena, so I fought him in this really tight corridor.
Oh dear.
Even on hardcore mode, I think I managed to down him with like one pistol shot to kind of get him into the injured animation, and then it was 3 more with a sniper rifle, and that was it. So it took me a few goes to get that down. But yeah, it kind of goes to show, much like the original game, with a bit of practice, you can trivialize a lot of these bosses and stuff. Or RPG them. Did you RPG that guy? I can't remember. You probably wouldn't have had one at this point, or wouldn't have been able to afford one, I imagine, at that point.
Oh no, I wouldn't have used it on him anyway. It's just a mob.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a strong
bosses
mob.
only. I never used it on mobs. Because yeah, 30,000 pesetas.
Yeah, it's a pricey purchase. So while we were in the castle, I might as well talk a little bit about the mechanics with Ashley. So as I mentioned before, you have 2 modes, one where she kind of hangs back a little bit and follows you, and one where she stays close. In this mode as well, she also reacts to you aiming your gun a lot better. She ducks and gets out the way a lot better than the original Ashley did, thank God. She does stand there still a little bit and get grabbed, but I think that's kind of still fairly par for the course. I mean, you probably don't want to let the person you're trying to rescue get surrounded by guys anyway, so if you're letting that happen...
Yeah.
But I have found that as well, it's honestly not too much of a problem as long as you tell her to stay close, because whenever you fire your gun, she just pulls up right behind you, so that's really useful as well. The one thing that I have noticed, I think I've previously praised the voice acting for this character, and they've done a much better job in terms of getting her character across, making her sound much less whiny and annoying, and sound like a real person, and that is obviously a step forward. But one thing I have noticed that there is some excessive panting and huffing whenever you're sprinting around a room sometimes. It's constant, and it's a little off-putting. I don't want to turn the dialogue down too much because I still want to hear what they have to say, but I do notice constantly that you've just got this noise of Ashley panting and puffing in the background, and it's just... I mean, Leon does it as well, but her one seems to overtake yours, or maybe it's just my ears are more deaf to Leon's as I've been running around the entire game with them. I don't know, but
She's probably more unfit.
yeah, it makes sense. It's just a little jarring to be constantly happening. I feel like they could just tone that down a little bit for no reason in particular. It's just again, it's just one of those things that I've noticed.
That's a fair point. Don't want that in your ears.
So the main antagonist in the castle section, as people know, is obviously Salazar. Leon and his relationship remains pretty much the same. Leon is very kind of dismissive of anything that Salazar has to say. And Salazar's kind of running this like this is a freaky game show. So it's all of that is still very much present in there. They've done a really, really good job on the castle sound design as well. This one, it feels a lot more ominous. It feels like there's a constant enemy presence in the castle because you can constantly hear chanting and ringing throughout all of the corridors a lot of the time as you're walking through. And although it's background sounds, it's very hard to tell if you're about to walk into a room full of guys or it is just the general ambience of the castle and various whispering voices and things. So it puts you on edge constantly, which is really clever.
Nice, that is, yeah, there's a nice touch.
So man, other than that, that's pretty much me for the week. Without going into too much detail, which I'll leave for another week, that's me done for the catch-up.
Nice. Well, it sounds like you're having fun. Look forward to hearing more about RE4 as you get further through it. With all that said and done, why don't we move on over to the news? So our first news story this week, Diablo 4 early access players are experiencing major connection issues.
I don't believe it. After the invitation to come and crush their servers, their last statement on this, major connection issues being kind of the number one thing that people are talking about at the moment. It's not great, is it?
Not a great look at all. So, according to multiple sources, early access players of Blizzard's action RPG Diablo 4 are reporting that they've been experiencing problems connecting to the game. For context, those who purchased the Bringer of All Death Balls Out Reaper Slice edition of the game can begin playing today at the time of recording.
That is is that a, have you
That's
taken a
not the
little bit of
official name, no.
creative license there on the Bringer of All Death Balls Out Reaper Slice edition? Reaper Slice, what's that about?
AKA I just made it up, man.
Oh, it's all ad-libbing, okay.
Jesus Christ.
Sorry, dude, I didn't mean to pick this apart.
That's right. I think it's called the Deluxe Edition. I thought that was boring. So
Okay.
I thought I'd spice it up.
Fine. Do you know what? Honestly, I probably would buy the Death Balls Out Reaper Slice edition over
course you
the Deluxe edition or the Ultimate Evil edition.
But yeah, so no, that's 4 days early. So those who bought the Deluxe Edition have the privilege of playing the game 4 days early, similar to what I had with Hogwarts Legacy when I bought it and got it to play 3 days early. But apparently, login errors seem to be a major issue across all platforms, although it seems most prevalent on the PlayStation 4 and 5.
Okay, refreshing to hear that PC players aren't the ones getting fucked. But
they still might be.
It's not great news though. Is it? Well, getting less fucked. We're not getting the most fucked. It sounds like. Honestly, I'll take a pinch of good news whenever I can get it at this stage.
Yeah, you're really trying to find the diamond in the rough
Yeah.
there. But so, what are these issues? We're talking long queues, frequent crashes, licensing issues, which is really concerning, and just general difficulty connecting to Battle.net. But I presume that's probably high demand on the servers because this game's really hyped. So
It is, but as you say, this is the early access thing. So, what percentage of players that are going to ultimately end up slamming the servers actually bought the Bringer of All Death Balls Out Reaper Slice edition of the game? Like, that can't be all of them. You're going to obviously expect there to be a sudden, 4 or 6 days of advanced play? So there's going to be like a big extra tide of players then joining after that as well. So, and the servers are already getting slammed. This is not a good sign at all.
well, it doesn't say everyone, to be fair. Just says a lot of people. But is it a sign that the game's popular or is it just another dodgy launch? That is the question. Either way, Blizzard need to get it sorted.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Whoever is on this now is going to be working overtime. I pity that guy or gal.
Well, as it goes, I know someone who is playing it currently. Literally, as we record, I know someone who is playing it. And so far, so good as far as I can tell. But he is on PC. Shout out to George.
Oh, nice. He went for the Bringer of All Death Balls Out Reaper Slice edition of the game. I'm not letting it go, James.
Let it go, let it go.
So, moving on to our second story of the week. Potential GTA 6 spoilers? Question mark. So, we may not have seen GTA 6 at the recent PlayStation showcase. However, when asked on a live stream what was currently known about the game, gaming journalist Tyler McVicker stated, "We already know how GTA 6 is going to end. Spoilers, Bonnie and Clyde back in like the 30s died in a blaze of gunfire. It's not 3 playable characters, it's 2 playable characters. It takes place with a time jump. It takes place in the Miami, Florida area and then also part of Cuba. It's about the drug trade. It's about bank robbing. It'll be out in 2024. Big statement. Big statements.
Yeah, lots of statements in there. I mean, some of this is, pretty much already been confirmed as well. He might have slipped that in to sort of add legitimacy to the statement. You'd have to be pretty confident in order to come out. Otherwise, people would clearly start questioning your integrity as a journalist if you're just spouting nonsense. So, I mean, again, this is the internet world we live in. So.
Yeah. Well, so for a bit of context on that point, McVicker has had a solid track record for leaks in the past, although they have mostly been focused on games and projects from Valve, which I believe where he used to work. However, a lot of what he has mentioned is already common knowledge, as you've just said there, right? So, we knew it was going to be in Vice City and Miami. We knew it was probably going to be a Bonnie and Clyde type deal with 2 characters rather than 3. Although I think, a third one could have been in the works, we don't know. The things that are interesting for me about it is the time jump, and it'll be out in 2024. The Cuba thing's also cool, but they kind of have precedent with that, because didn't they kind of do that with Red Dead? Well, I don't think it was Cuba, but didn't they have like Mexico or something?
So Red Dead 1 had Mexico, and then Red Dead 2, I can't remember the name of the island, but I think it was an island off of Cuba.
Is it Guaja or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so the Cuba thing's really cool, but it doesn't surprise me as much. But time jump, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, so I'm really interested to see what plot B that centers around. And obviously, as we know, it's a man and a woman in relationship in this game. Where does that time jump happen? Does that time jump happen like shortly after they meet? Does it focus on when they meet and then there's a time jump towards when they're actually, I guess, robbing everything? Or is that time jump going to happen that they are a pre-established relationship in the game and then something happens? Maybe one of them dies, or maybe they have a a breakup or something. And then we have this big time skip forward where something needs to happen between them to reconcile or something. Where is this going in terms of plot?
I'm envisaging in my head, at least, some sort of, you start the game as like them at the tail end of their careers. They're getting on a bit and they've come on bad times and they've got to do one last job. And then you go back in time and replay all of their previous jobs so you can sort of learn their story, get an idea of who they are. And then your final mission is them like doing their final heist as like older people, and then maybe one of them dies or something. That would be my speculative arc, if you like.
I don't think that's particularly typical of Rockstar storytelling, but I like the take on it. I think that it's nice. It definitely follows kind of like a bit more of like a Guy Ritchie style movie in terms of like telling stories from different perspectives, slightly different times, and then linking them all back. I like the sound of that, and it would be cool if the game was. I'm just struggling to think of an example where Rockstar has done something like that before.
Well, they sort of did it in GTA 5 in terms of the tutorial mission is a heist from back in the day, right? And then it sort of goes into more modern day.
Yeah,
I think?
yeah,
Or am I
yeah.
misremembering?
No,
Is
that's
that right?
absolutely right. So yeah, I think the initial heist is set something like 10 or 5 years before, and then
Yeah.
it jumps into the modern day. Yeah, that's right.
So they've got precedent in terms of the concept, but not for a whole game, if you see what I mean.
Not for a whole game, or not for them to link it back, where they kind of initiate something, then go back in time, and then come back to the present sort of thing. That's a bit more that's like a time skip.
Yeah, it'd
Sort
be
of
cool
thing.
though.
Yeah, which again I'm behind, but I think that a good point about GTA 5 in terms of the fact that they do have an initial heist. It'd be really interesting to see what actually ends up coming out with this game. I'm interested, same as you, about the time skip. I think that is definitely has quite a few implications in terms of where the story could go or what might happen.
But even more sort of interesting to me really is it's going to come out in 2024. I wasn't expecting this to be till like 2026.
2025 at the very earliest, yeah.
Yeah, I'm staggered that would be the case. That means that in at most a year and a half you could be playing it. That seems too early to me.
One thing that Rockstar definitely has a precedence for is delaying its major titles until they are goddamn good and ready to come out. So it might be currently internally slated for a 2024 release. That might slip, as in that will probably slip. I think we're looking at 2025.
Feels ambitious to me, 2024.
Very ambitious, given the sneak and the leaks that we saw earlier this year.
Yeah, but how old's that footage now? Now, how can we speculate how old that footage is now if they're saying 2024? Who knows? It's interesting. And our final news story today. The MetaQuest 3 is announced and it's due to release later on this year. Exciting news potentially as the owner of a Quest 2 will.
It's definitely pricked my ears. I mean, I kind of do feel like that meme of the dude that's walking down the street holding the hand of his girlfriend, but turning around to looking over his shoulder.
Just turning back at Quest 3.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I really like my Quest 2. It does everything I need it to do. But then at the same time, some of the specs that I'm hearing about here in terms of like an improved resolution and, you know, field of view and stuff in the goggles, the fact that it's a lot more lightweight, all of these things do appeal to me. It's just, does it justify the price tag? But I'll let you cover that in a second.
After months of being nothing more than rumour, we finally have some information on the MetaQuest 3 VR headset. Apparently it will be released in fall of this year at a price point of $499. Specifications on the new unit haven't yet been shared, but Meta have said that the Quest 3 will be 40% thinner and more comfortable.
Yeah, I think that it did have some criticisms over the weight of the unit, and it's kind of seen for a lot of people, not me personally, but it's kind of seen that an additional head support is pretty mandatory for one of these headsets for long-term use. So, again, that will appeal to that crowd.
Yeah, but it doesn't actually say any of that though. It just says it'll be thinner and more comfortable. It doesn't mention anything about being lighter, doesn't mention anything about being more stable. So I hope that you're right there. But also it's going to have better displays and resolution and double the graphical performance, which is a big statement, but also should be good.
Yeah, I want to benchmark that. Can it play Half-Life Alyx, I think is the main question. If it can do that, that suggests to me that it's powerful enough to do everything that I want it to do for the long term.
Well, the thing I was most pleased to see is that it will also be fully backwards compatible with the MetaQuest 2 headset and its games, apparently.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. They've got quite a good lock on their library now, and it's kind of operating similar to iOS. They just keep updating the titles to keep up.
You know, it would have been awful if they'd gone the Sony route and not have any backwards compatibility.
Oh jeez, yeah.
But of course, a good byproduct of all of this as well is that Meta is also going to reduce the price of the Quest 2. So effective June 4th, the 128GB unit will be reduced to $299 apparently, and the 256GB version will drop to $349. Now, I'm not going to lie, I don't know what the price is normally, but presumably it's nearer the $499 that the Quest 3 is being priced at. But no, so it all sounds very positive, but it remains to be seen whether this will actually be the case. Fall isn't too far away, man. We're looking at 3 months, 4 months.
Ah, fall, autumn, the smell of cum in the air. That's a callback for our early listeners. So in this article, it actually states that linden trees smell like cum.
Linden trees smell like cum.
Yeah, it is. I think that about does it for the news for this week, so why don't we move on over to Completionist Corner?
Here we go for the completionist's corner. Corner.
So, Completionist Corner this week, new game. What is it, I hear you ask? It's Undertale.
Yes, Undertale. Very excited to get stuck into this game.
Yes, so a little bit about this game. Came out in 2015, developed by Toby Fox, and was very highly critically acclaimed when it came out, I believe. I think it's got one of its scores, I forget whether it's Metacritic or another, is 94 out of 100, which given that it's 8 years later, is pretty mad.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually sold over 1 million copies, just to give you an idea of how many people have played this small 2D RPG.
Yeah, really did well.
For good reason, I think, for the most part.
So without further ado, let's get into it. We start off telling the story of how it all began. Long ago, 2 races ruled over the earth, humans and monsters. One day, a war broke out between the 2 races, and after a long battle, the humans were victorious. 7 of their greatest magicians confined the monsters to the underground with a magical barrier. Many years after the war, we, the protagonist, a human child, climbed the mountain for shits and giggles. Mischievous little bastard that we are. It is said that those who climb the mountain never return, but that doesn't stop us. Almost predictably, given our gung-ho approach, we fall down a hole on the mountain, beginning our story.
Having fallen onto a bed of golden flowers, our adventure begins in an area called the Ruins. We immediately meet a sadistic flower called Flowey who attempts to kill us, seemingly for his own amusement. I really like the sprite for Flowey. He's very cute, sort of
Yeah.
almost your classic yellow smiley face. Although it's a pixelated game, I think he's just white on the cutscenes that he's in. Cutscenes is generous, or more like, as I said, on his sprite. But I do like the transformation that he makes as well. There's a slight
Yeah.
evil behind it, and yeah,
There's a massive evil.
get
behind
into
it
that
in
shortly.
Some points. Yeah, jeez.
Thankfully, Flowey is stopped from killing us by another monster by the name of Toriel, who instantly comes across as a friendly, almost mother-like character. Toriel looks like a kind of like a cow lady, I guess is the best.
I always thought
description.
goat, but yeah,
Goats,
that
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
deal.
There's some ghosts maybe
With,
Yeah,
like,
she's got
sheep's
little
ears,
horns.
though.
Yeah, yeah. She's a mixture of herd animals.
But bipedal
Yeah, but bipedal. Yeah.
and in a dress.
So, in what acts as a tutorial of sorts, Toriel teaches us how to solve puzzles and resolve conflicts in the underground.
Yes, and there was sort of a variety of puzzles throughout this game. She sort of takes us through, I guess, various examples of what we can expect, which is floors and routes that you can't see any barriers, but you have to walk through them in a certain order, otherwise you get hurt, or you might get an encounter or something like that, or you're just simply blocked off. We see puzzles where you have to flick certain switches but not others. We push some boulders around onto certain switches to move spike gates and things of that nature. The usual sort of puzzle fare.
Yeah, I would say so, yeah. The thing that stands out in this game over the puzzles is more the kind of the vibe of the game and the game's sense of humour as well. It's definitely not overstated loud type of humour, but it's immediately got a type of quirk to it, this game, which hooked me in quite nicely.
Yes, and it develops nicely as the story goes on too. The
Absolutely.
more characters you meet, and particularly with the run that I did, there's some really quite funny moments, but we'll get into those as they come.
And although there is a lot of block sliding and activating of pressure plates, some of the puzzles in this game do get you to think outside the box, or even just kind of almost like a slightly Resident Evil style of puzzle as well, where you've got to kind of pick up an item and maybe hold on to it for later. You initially might be able to consume it or use it, but it might be best held on to for later so that it'll have a specific use. So, as well as the game's puzzles, there's also a combat system. And this activates very much kind of, I guess, a bit like a Pokemon game, really, where you're
Very
walking
much
around.
like a Pokemon game. That was the description I was going to use. Yeah.
Yeah. So you get these sort of random encounters as you wander around, and you also get various NPCs and boss characters that you fight throughout the game. Now, this is a very kind of, I would say, a pretty unconventional style of combat that initially presents itself as very conventional. So, when you're looking at the initial fight screen, you get 4 main buttons to start off with, and you're typically facing the main character on the screen. The 4 buttons being fight, which allows you to proceed on with an attack using your equipped weapon. You have the act button, which I assume stands for action, and that is kind of, it'll give you an array of commands. You can either check the enemy or you can perform various actions. Those actions are dependent on the enemy that you're facing and might include things such as flirt, threaten, pet.
There are all sorts. Too many to list, believe me. Again, the run that I used these a lot.
The remaining 2 buttons are the item screen, where you can have a look in your backpack and use various healing items for your character. And the 4th button is the mercy button, which enables you to either run away from the fight, or if you've progressed the fight far enough, you can actually spare certain enemies in the game as well.
Yeah. Not quite far enough. You have to do certain actions in a very specific order in a lot of the fights to unlock the ability to spare.
I think it's a lot harder to spare certain enemies than others. I think some can just be achieved through essentially like petting them repeatedly, for instance.
Yeah, but you have to know how many times to pet them and stuff as well.
Yeah, the game gives you a bit of a prompt. Like the dialogue, essentially it runs out of things to say almost. Then it'll say something like, it shows no signs of stopping or whatever. And at that point, that's your kind of cue to do it, I think.
But there are some that are crazy. You just wouldn't believe the sort of combinations you have to do to get certain things to work.
So already this game is presenting us with a combat option as well as a list of all sorts of wacky ways to get yourself out of combat as well, which I really appreciated. So after you click the fight button, once you get into it, you are a heart on the screen. That heart on the screen will be subjected to various projectile points, and you'll have enemy projectiles coming in, usually into a white rectangle that your heart is surrounded by. And you need to use your WASD or your joystick to move the heart around the white rectangle, either avoiding projectiles. In some cases, you'll need to not be moving while a projectile passes across you. In other cases, you'll need to be moving while a projectile passes across you. And it essentially presents quite a few different mini games. Some of them are just avoiding projectiles. Some of them involve you kind of doing a bit of like a Flappy Bird style game. And another one involves you actually shooting as well. So it mixes up the gameplay, but a lot of the things you're doing on screen aren't necessarily representative of the combat that's actually going on. So before you actually activate the mini game mode, there is like a brief, almost like a perfect tennis swing or like a perfect golf club swing in those video games. There's a sweet spot right in the middle of the bar, and there's a white bar that's traveling across it, and you need to get it as close to the center of the bar as possible to maximize your damage, and then the mini game begins where you start to avoid their projectiles. That's the way that they trade. You do your attack, and then they trade their attack as well.
So, having given us a mobile phone, Toriel leaves us on our own to head home for a surprise. She tells us to stay put, however, being the naughty child that we are, we ignore her instructions and head off through the ruins, encountering monsters and puzzles along the way. So at this point I've got to ask, Will, when Toriel rang you and asked what flavour you wanted, butterscotch or cinnamon, what did you pick?
Oh, I went for cinnamon. Cinnamon
excellent.
pie.
I went for butterscotch.
Did you?
How nice.
Very good. Both sides of the coin already covered there. I'm sure that will have major implications for later on in the game.
A little spoiler there, but we eventually arrive at a house, which turns out to be Toriel's, and as we've just mentioned there, she's inside making us a pie. That was the surprise. It wasn't a very well hidden surprise, to be fair. She's like, so if I was going to bake a pie, would you prefer butterscotch or cinnamon?
Doesn't it end up that she's made us a pie that just has both anyway?
I think that's what she sort of says. It's like a cinna-scotch or
Yeah,
butter,
yeah, when you get
it. But in my inventory, it just said butterscotch.
Oh, right, okay.
When I had the slice, so I don't know whether it actually was. But yeah, she made us a pie, and that was good times. And actually, like, given the graphics of the game, it actually looked like quite a tasty pie.
This game is very pixely, and it kind of emulates that sort of. It's not even SNES graphics; it really is kind of NES level of graphics in there. And that's the only thing I can quite compare it to. But they've done an astounding job of actually crafting some of these characters and making them look so recognizable. The artwork is something that really stands out in this game, and it definitely really contributes to its overall personality.
Yeah, so shout outs to Toby Fox and all those that contributed, because I was watching the credits and I know that a lot of people were involved in that, so fair play. So with Pie in tow, we speak to her, and she is under the impression that we're going to stay with her. However, we, naturally, want to head back to the surface, which is our home. Toriel attempts to talk us out of it, but we are persistent, and eventually it leads to her stopping us in front of a door, and this is where we have boss fight numero uno, Toriel. She puts it over as, I care about you too much to let you go out there, so I'm going to fight you to stop you.
She stands in our way.
She does, and fires like fireballs at us and stuff.
Yeah, it seems a little excessive. Yeah, I mean, attacking a child with deadly weapons is one way of keeping them inside.
So at this point, we should probably say that Will and I are actually running two different sort of runs of this game, if you like. There are 3 options in total, which are called the neutral run, the pacifist run, and the genocide run. I'm running the pacifist run, so at no point in this game am I to harm any other creature. I have to spare everything I possibly can, so I never really go near the fight button. So for this fight, I literally just had to go into my actions, try and plead with her for a bit, talk to her, and then just keep pressing spare until she got bored, basically.
Really? Okay. I kind of, in my head, I thought that she was going to be the one character you had to kill.
No. So yeah, literally got to the end, and eventually she's like, "You're just not giving up, are you? You're so determined." And then it's like, "Fine, I'm not going to stop you. You can try and go. You clearly don't want to be here." Well, I'm guessing by the sounds of it then that you just killed Toriel.
I did kill Toriel. Yes, yeah.
Oh,
James was going for the pacifist run on this. I kind of initially stated and thought that I was going to go for the genocide run, but there's certain actions in the game I found that the game was drawing me away from being completely evil, and I just decided to run with it. So it sounds like I will most likely get the neutral ending now. Or at least that's the one I assume I'll be working towards from this point onwards.
So I've got to ask them, man, like, what happens to Toriel when you beat her if you get her to 0 HP? Like, what?
She straight up just fades out. Like, you kill her
That's
and she
it.
just kind of disappears off into a spectral mist. She, like, says that there's, like, not much animosity there or anything like that between your character. And, yeah, she just dies, and you are left with quite a feeling of guilt there quite early on in the game. And this is before you've even gotten really too deep into anything. And straight away I was getting these feelings of remorse and the fact that perhaps I wasn't going to be the full-on evil dude that I expected myself to be on this playthrough.
Yeah, I can't say I blame you. I can't believe you killed her.
I
was
honestly,
lovely.
I didn't. Yeah, she was. I just didn't think that it was a possibility.
She
At that
made you a pie.
I wasn't familiar with the act mechanic. Okay. Fight is the first one that it ticks when you go into that thing. It wants you to fight. It doesn't even,
damn.
literally, it doesn't even care so much about actions. It doesn't even finish off telling you what the word is. It just gives you 3 letters and hopes for the best.
Oh, man.
Why does it have the whole fight word and not the whole action word, I wonder? Could the game be guiding you down an early path?
But Toriel, dude.
Yes, Toriel. Goodbye, Toriel.
That's genuinely made me a little bit sad.
I like how I started this before the recording session. Like, don't worry, I didn't do anything too evil. I decided to take the neutral
Yeah.
path. And like, literally, the first thing I say is, anyway, so I kill our mum. I kill our adoptive mum.
Yeah, you kill literally the nicest person in the game. Damn, man. That's brutal.
So after the boss fight with our adoptive mother / abusive kidnapper,
God damn, man. Don't slander her name after you've killed her. Man. You've done enough.
don't speak ill of the dead.
At least she's still alive in my version.
So after finishing her off, we head through the door further into the underground. It's worth noting at this point, the way the story progresses from here is determined by our actions, with the storyline changing significantly based on said actions. With our playstyles chosen, we set out on our way through the first main area of the game called Snowdin.
Snowdin.
Snowdin, as you'd imagine, sounds pretty self-explanatory, does what it says on the tin. It is a snowy area. And they are, I mean, the inn in the area is also called Snowdin Inn. So I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? Very good use of
They're
language. In
good.
this
They're
game,
good.
all
The
round, to
writing
be
in
fair.
this game is fun.
Gotta
Yeah.
say, yeah. As you mentioned earlier, it has its own sort of style and humour, and this things like this sort of lead into it, you know?
Yeah, it's a very different kind of take on humor that we're not used to seeing very often in kind of more larger titles. It's something that I feel like, for the most part, you only really get with indie games of this flavour.
And actually, 2 of the characters that really sort of show this to its fullest, the 2 characters that we're going to meet very shortly.
Yeah, yeah.
So, as we're walking through the snowy area, right, we get stopped by a skeleton called Sans. And the very first thing he does, I believe, is reach out, shakes our hand, and in his hand he's holding a whoopee cushion.
He's a prankster.
He's a prankster, a joker. He does dad jokes. He does one-liners.
Hijinks.
He's wicked. And he's got a very, very distinctive voice in the game, which is quite impressive given that there are no voices in the game.
Yeah, it's all kind of just chattering sound effects. Yeah. They also change up the music as well in the background between the 2 characters, and that adds flavour to it as well quite a bit. Whenever you come up to a situation with the 2 characters that we're just about to discuss, a bit of music always kicks in, and it kind of almost feels like a sketch that you're entering.
Exactly. And they are sort of like a sketch double act really as well, because after we meet Sans, we actually then in the next area we meet the second character of this double act in a really great scene where there's actually a lamp in the middle of the street basically that's shaped exactly the same as our sprite that we can hide behind. Is very, very funny. And the second character we meet is Sans' brother Papyrus, who is personally my favourite character in the whole game.
He's enthusiastic about his job. I don't think he quite knows what his
It's
job
not
is,
even
but
his job.
he
That's
is
the best thing.
enthusiastic.
Yeah, and he's just so dumb in like the most charming way.
It's very slapstick just how silly that
Yeah.
character is. And honestly, with the background of the rest of the game, it just plays really well.
Yeah, and oh man, this guy is great. He's obsessed with pasta,
Yes, yeah.
and it's very, very funny, especially with Sans.
He tries to share a bowl of pasta with you, but unfortunately it's frozen solid and completely inedible. So
Yeah.
that's actually one of the puzzles, I think, is that he has left you a bowl of pasta for you to eat so that it is a trick because it will stop you from progressing, because apparently the taste of it is so nice that you won't be thinking about progressing in the game any further.
Yeah, exactly. So good.
Just silly things like that. It's great.
And like this whole sort of scene, he's trying to slow us down, and Sans is sort of helping us, but not really helping us.
Sans is a very lazy character, isn't he? If he can get out of
Incredibly
not doing
lazy.
something, then that's the course he takes. Sorry to cut you off there again, but a bit later down the line, you find 2 snowmen next to each other, clearly made by Sans and Papyrus.
Yeah.
Papyrus is like a kind of almost like an Adonis style statue where he's like let's say he's been very generous with his biceps.
Incredibly so.
And then you've got Sans' one on the side, which is literally just a pile of snow with the word Sans scribbled on it.
Exactly,
Just to give you a
so-
picture of what their characters are like. Papyrus is this massive ego, thinks he's the best at everything. He's striving to
He's
be a
just
royal
deluded.
guard, completely deluded about his own abilities.
But in the best way.
And then you have Sans, who is spending a lot of the time kind of shaking his head at his brother, but he's also a bit of a prankster and kind of a bit of a lazy bum as well.
Yeah, he's the sort of guy you can imagine just drinking in his like shack.
Oh, definitely.
But no, and then this is also encapsulated by this section really, because for the most part we're just going through puzzles that Papyrus is trying to set for us, but he either gives away the solution himself, or there's one where it's like random squares will be generated to give you a really tough route, and it just happens to give you a route like that just goes straight across.
Well, yeah, it just doesn't work. His machine just breaks. That's another one as well, because he's reading out the rules, and there is maybe 5 or 6 or even more different
I think it's
colors of
7 or
tile,
8, yeah.
right? And he's telling you what each of them do when you stand on them, and you kind of think, all right, so the red ones I can't stand on. Okay, but then if I stand on the blue one, you're in water then, which has piranhas in it, but you're fine unless you smell like lemons. And if you stand on a purple tile or whatever, that will make you smell like lemons. And then there's also smelling like oranges as well. I think I've confused this. I think they don't like lemons. Piranhas do like oranges.
Yeah, but you know the sort of deal though.
And you're thinking, oh my god, how am I ever going to remember any of this? And then, of course, the machine breaks and you just walk straight across.
I don't think it breaks. I think it's because everything's random. It just the joke is that it just happens to randomly be pink squares which do nothing. For, like,
Oh,
basically
right,
the whole
okay.
thing.
I thought I heard some malfunctioning noises in the background. I was probably
You
just...
may be right. I
yeah.
just that was how I read it. I was like, oh hell yeah! It just randomly did that just because it's Papyrus and he's gonna have awful luck. And sort of the other things we meet along this route, we meet a few mini bosses, and basically all of them are dog related. So there's one dog that's a guard dog in his shack, and this is where we learn the mechanic that if one of the enemies attacks is blue, you have to stand still and it won't hit you. And he's sort of basically can only see moving objects, which is the gimmick. There's sort of lesser dogs, which are little dogs in armor that are they just want you to pet them once, then they'll go away. There's one set that's a pair of dogs who are in love and they think that you smell like a human. So in my case, you had to roll in the snow and
Oh, really?
then you,
Oh,
then,
that's
then
cool.
you smelt like a puppy, and then you just like then you pet them twice and they're like, dogs can pet other dogs, this is mental. And then you can spare them and leave.
So they have really developed the alternative options outside. It actually sounds much more developed than the fighting is.
Yeah, it probably is, man.
I assume that you still have to do the second part of the fighting, which is the point where you are the different coloured heart on the screen needing to avoid the projectiles.
Yes, between every single action or even just sparing, you have to do their attack as well. So
That's
we
right.
probably played the same game.
Yeah.
And then the final one that I want to just mention is then the Greater Dog, which is just a hench body of armor with just a dog in it.
I like that at the beginning because it kind of comes out the snow at you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It looks like a little dog in the snow and then it stands up and it's just...
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so
All
good.
with this big smile on its face. Like, yeah, I'm a big dog.
It's like meant to be like a little Chihuahua or Pomeranian or something like
Yeah,
that.
I think it's
yeah.
a Pomeranian, yes, I do. Or a Husky, maybe. And this one was ridiculous. I can't remember the exact order, but it was like beckon, so it comes over to you.
That's right.
Pet it once, it falls asleep on your lap. Then you play with it. Then you pet it like 3 times, I think. And then you can finally spare it.
I kept on going, actually, but maybe I'm getting confused with the previous fight, but its neck keeps on getting longer. It keeps on raising its head to get more pats. So when you're looking at the character, every time you pet it, its head keeps on going, and I got it to the point where the head had just gone out the screen. And it said something like it's showing no signs of stopping at that point, so I decided to spare it. So I did have a heart in this section, and a couple of the dogs I did spare. However, the pair of dogs I chose to summarily execute.
Wow, you killed the ones that are in love.
Yeah, well, I felt like it'd be cruel to just kill one of them, so I decided to kill both.
Man, you're so schizophrenic in this round.
I'm all over
It's
over
really
the place. in this
distressing.
one.
You killed Toriel and a lovely couple.
I didn't kill the greater dog or the little dog.
Oh man. Were you killing like any random encounters you got, like Ice Hat?
Yeah, I was killing random encounters. It was kind of really... I was trying to keep with my genocide thing for the most part until you explained to me before we started recording that genocide literally does mean you kill everything.
Yeah.
But I was killing all the things that look like monsters, but I was trying not to... Toriel excluded from this, trying not to kill the kind of cute things. And to be fair, the pair of dogs are wielding axes, whereas the doggo and the greater dog are just in armor. So I think that... that's fine.
Great Dog has a halberd, doesn't he?
He was really cute though. But those pair of dogs with the axes, They looked dodgy. I
They're
didn't
like
like them.
smooching across the screen. They're really sweet.
They're embracing each other with axes in their hands as well, though, so it's very confusing.
You're very confusing.
I think that they wanted to get into a cuckold type situation there because he was talking about sprinkling his wife's fleas on me. So
Oh, that's
really
weird.
not quite sure
I
what's
didn't
going
get
on
that. I didn't get that dialogue choice.
Right, yeah.
I just got you smell like a puppy. Are you a puppy? And things like
Fine. Yeah. We're going to discover that the dialogue we got in the game is very different, I understand.
that. Probably, yeah. Oh dear.
Eventually, we find ourselves in Snowdin Town, a monster village in the mountains. Here we can restock on healing items, upgrade our weapons and armor if needed before continuing on our journey east. As we continue to head east, we end up caught in a snowstorm with only our silhouette visible. As we progress further into the storm, we are eventually stopped by another very familiar looking silhouette. It's time for boss fight numero dos, Papyrus.
No. And you're going to tell me you killed him.
Maybe not, James.
You said you killed all monster-looking things.
So I did with this boss fight. This was a weird one. I tried maybe like 4 or 5 times to kill this guy. He has a big old health bar. It was difficult. And then he was kind of like, you keep on... So every time you lose the boss fight, he captures you and puts you back in a prison cell. And this prison cell is just in his house, in the village just across the way. And every time you walk out of the prison cell, the bars are spaced so that a child can just easily walk through the bars. Again, like another explanation into the idiocy
I love
of
that he
Papyrus.
just puts you in his house. That's amazing.
He's built like a prison cell in there to keep you in there, but obviously the bars are just so widely spaced that you just walk straight out. And he's even like, I don't know whether he thinks you're a dog because there's a bowl of dog food in there and stuff as well. And then the second time you get caught, he puts you back in there. And then you find a note in there that says, this time, like, you won't even want to leave. And then when you re-examine the dog kibble, it says that he's cut up bits of hot dogs and put it in there as well this time round. So, like, yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on there. But anyway, after a few goes, he eventually kind of wanted to be my friend. And I rolled with it. I liked Papyrus like you. I didn't want to see the end of him, and I actually did spare him in the end, and we became friends, but I just walked off.
Sounds more like he spared you.
Yeah, yeah. No, that is very fair. Yeah, he did spare me in that situation, yeah. And yeah, he let me go on my way.
Oh, fair. So, well, in which case we had... we definitely didn't have a similar
No.
So what I did, right, is... the first thing that you do if you're doing the pacifist run, or at least first thing I thought to do with my options, I flirted with him, because you would, wouldn't you?
I did notice that in the actions, because although I was planning on attacking them, I was always checking just to see what the actions were, because I noticed that they varied up for enemy. Very pleased to see flirt being an option for Papyrus.
Yeah, particularly with his standing sprite.
Yeah,
the most camp thing you've ever seen in your life. It's wicked.
I gotta say though, I think I actually might have even tried to flirt with him, and it said something like he was too busy fighting or something like that. What do you have to do to break him out of that?
That might be because you'd killed someone or something.
Oh, okay,
With
yeah,
mine,
could be.
he was like really receptive to it.
I think I'd been mean to him before or something. I don't
Maybe,
know.
yeah.
Yeah, I think my friendship points weren't enough. He was not receptive at all to my efforts of flirting.
Oh, fair. So for me, it was I flirted with him once, and then for the rest of the fight, I was just like
Having a chit chat.
having a little chat, and the good thing about this fight is you normally have a red heart, as Will's described there, and that means you sort of have free roam to move where you want. The first thing Papyrus does is he turns your heart blue, which weighs you down, and you have gravity, so it becomes more of a jumping game. The longer you hold the jump button, the higher you go.
He tricks me with that as well, because he says, okay, I'm going to activate my special attack, and then he just sends a load of blue things at you, and you're like, oh, well, this is very in line with Papyrus being completely ineffective.
Yeah.
You just don't have to move. And then he takes you by surprise and turns your heart blue, which I wasn't expecting.
No, and then his basic attack is sort of you just jump over bones and avoid things, and there's some cool little tunnely sections.
But you have to time your jumps, whether they're low ones or high ones, given how long you hold the jump for.
Yeah, and at this point I actually have to ask you something about doing a run where you gain EXP. Does your health go up when you level up?
Yes. Yeah, so the...
Bastard, I'm so jealous of that. I had 20 health for the whole game.
That was, oh wow, okay, yes. So that was actually something that I noticed very early on is that clearly when you make the choice to fight everyone, you gain both EXP as well as LV. And the LV represents your hit points and the EXP represents your character level. And what I noticed is that whenever I did spare someone, you would get gold for the encounter, but you wouldn't get EXP. So you'd get your currency, but you wouldn't actually get your level up to increase your hit points.
So that was great for me because it meant I could buy healing items, which we know with level 1, 20 HP for the whole game, became a crutch towards the end. But thankfully at this point, I actually didn't find Papyrus too hard. Have misspent youth playing lots of games where you have to use weighted jumps to jump things through moving tunnels. So I found this okay. Much easier for me this was than a lot of the bullet hell style ones that have come before and will come after.
Yeah.
So having beaten Papyrus and thankfully spared him, both of us. I don't know how this would have continued for me if you'd killed Papyrus. I know you tried to, but
just hang up the headphones and close off the pod.
Exactly, just like Toriel and Papyrus. No, come. But having beaten him, the snowstorm clears and we can continue eastwards into a cavernous new section with what appear to be sort of gleaming stones embedded in the wall. It was really cool, this area. Sans is situated in an outpost, and near this outpost is a monster child who seems excited to meet someone. You have the option at this point to head to the snowed-in restaurant Grillbees with Sans. However, you can just continue on to the next area of the game, Waterfall. And it's at this point I'd like to bring up something that I don't think you will have experienced in the run and probably haven't experienced the later ones too. Because I'm doing the pacifist run, I obviously went and had a meal with Sans because good times. And as I was walking back, I saw Papyrus outside his house. So I thought, oh, this guy's a legend. I'll have a little chat with him. And it turns out, because I'd flirted with him in my run, and we'd had a really nice chat, and we were talking about going on a date and stuff, you can actually have that date.
That's nice. You can make good on your offer.
Yeah, so I actually ended up having a little date with Papyrus.
A little candlelit dinner. Did you Lady in the Trampet with some frozen spaghetti?
No, so it's really interesting what happens. He invites you into his home.
Oh, geez.
And you can sort of like mill about. You can look in his room and whatnot.
His weird pleasure dungeon.
And eventually it progresses and you get almost like a battle scene, but it's not a battle scene. Like you just basically like pick like all the positive options, just flirt with him and stuff.
Compliment.
and you get like his sprite comes on with a new outfit. And eventually you
Let
can
me
say,
slip
like,
into something more comfortable.
Kind of, yeah. But he's like he looks like a stereotypical sort of rapper type with like a hat.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Like
Wow.
he's just trying to be cool. And you have the option, he's like, I've got something secret hidden on my person. And I went for under his hat 'cause it seemed like the most obvious thing. And he had a bowl of spaghetti under his hat that he'd cooked for us for the date. He eventually friend zones us. But
Wow. Hey, but he, like a gentleman, he cooked us dinner
yeah, it's
first.
it's done tastefully, and we are a child.
Yes, also the whole child romantics with a skeleton is probably, the age gap there is probably quite significant.
To be fair, though, like credit to the writers before we like get accusing them of being pedos or something. It's done so tastefully that it's never really romantic. It's just all funny. It's all like a play date rather than a date. It's just the way that it's worded is like date.
Yeah, there is some minor innuendo and stuff to make the
Yeah.
game a laugh, but you never really feel like it's being directed towards
It's never
a child
pervy or
character
anything like
or anything
Yeah,
like
exactly. But yeah, so that was just quite a nice touch. So I had that date, and interestingly, then from then on, when I was on my continue or reset screen, there's this home screen, I had like a little Papyrus sprite on the side.
that. Oh, nice, just to signify that you went on a date with him.
Yeah, and that was cool. But yeah, so having had my date with Papyrus and feeling very, very happy and good about myself, we move into the next area of the game, which I'll say is called Waterfall. What did you think of this area, man? I've mentioned there that the aesthetic was sort of underground caverny, gleamy gemstone type things, and a lot of the puzzles sort of followed suit.
Yeah, that's right. So one of the main memorable puzzles in this area, I remember, was there are certain glowing mushrooms in the game that you can activate. And as they activate and deactivate, they kind of light up a path in front of you, and you've got to slowly reconfigure that path to find your way onto the next area.
And the other one that I thought was of note was the very first one, which is you have to drop seeds into water, and you have to get 4 in a row, so then they bud and you can get a bridge.
Yeah, but they do have to be specifically in a line
Yeah.
sort of thing as well. Yeah, it's takes
No
a little bit of
T-junctions.
working out there. Yeah, no T-junctions, no squares.
The other thing to mention is that as we walked into this area, we actually meet who is going to end up being the next sort of major character, if you like, after Papyrus and Sans. It's not really a meeting as such, because she's throwing spears at us and trying to kill us. But we do get our first glimpse into Undyne, who is basically at this point just an armoured creature. Ominous as fuck.
Yeah, it just looks like a dark clad knight almost.
Yeah. With like a glowing spear that she lobs at us.
So I was wondering in this section, just before I had that encounter, our good mate Papyrus phoned me up and asked me what I was wearing.
Yeah,
Just, funnily enough, on that note about the.
yeah,
He said, though, he does say it's nothing weird. It's just that he has a good friend who wants to know what we're wearing or something like that.
yeah.
And at that point, you can choose to tell him what you're wearing or not.
Which hilariously for me was the manly bandana.
Same here as well, actually. I
Yeah.
have a bandana as well. So I was wondering whether if you didn't tell Papyrus what you were wearing, whether you would actually have that encounter or a similar encounter with Undyne, given that at that point they might not know what you look like.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I was honest because it was Papyrus.
Yeah, no, same here. Same reasoning here.
So I was just like, yeah, what's he going to do? Yeah, I am
It sounded
wearing a bandana.
ominous, but I just feel like, yeah.
He was like, are you wearing a bandana? And I was like, yeah, I am, yeah.
He actually does call you up later and says that not betraying friends is really easy because he told his friend on the other line what they wanted to hear, which is what you were wearing. And obviously you wouldn't be stupid enough to actually tell him what you were wearing because it was so obvious what he was actually doing. So by that charm, he avoided betraying you as well, I guess, kind of.
And I was just like, whatever helps you sleep at night, mate.
Yeah.
Because you literally see him talking to Undyne at the top on the screen.
Yeah,
She's like,
yeah,
he's
yeah.
there, mate. He's there. Look, great character. Love it.
We should also mention at this point as well, Papyrus doesn't speak in this game. He screams the entire way because all of his text is just in like double-sized font, capital letters compared to everyone else. And it's all kind of shaky as well. So it's definitely, I'm sure he's just screaming at you the entire time.
Love him so much. He's great. Many would say that they prefer Sans. I'm a Papyrus fan, but I say.
Papyrus is like the dog, the lovable dog, and Sans is the kind of the cat, the cool, calm cat.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I can buy into that. We head through this area solving puzzles and such, and at random intervals meeting up with the monster child from previously, the one that was excited to see someone. Turns out that someone is Undyne. He's just a mega fan.
He is constantly face planting.
He's great though. He's a
Another
very cute sprite.
Good developed character there.
And because he's a child, he's wearing a striped shirt like we are.
As all children do.
Exactly. And along the way, as we're sort of progressing through this area, Undyne is constantly trying to capture us, seemingly obsessed with capturing our soul to give to her king, which at this point has no context whatsoever. It just sounds very murderous, doesn't it? So we avoid various spear area of effect attacks before eventually being cornered on a jetty. And at this point, Undyne uses her spear to collapse the jetty and we fall into the sewers, landing on another patch of golden flowers to cushion our fall. Very convenient.
These golden flowers are placed very conveniently.
Yes, I wonder if they have any significance to the storyline whatsoever.
Probably not.
So at this point, we walk through another tunnel, sort of seemingly leading out of these sewers, walking past some hilarious sort of trash items that you can like interact with, and they just get like a funny little line of text. And we come to our next mini boss, which was actually really unexpected to me. So as part of the tutorial, Toriel has us talk to a dummy
That's right.
to just like show the act sort of mechanic off.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, you don't just kill everything.
Exactly. And then you killed her, you bastard. And I don't know about you, there was another dummy there, and I saw it, knew what it was, so I just completely ignored it. I didn't even interact with it. I was like, sweet, there's another dummy there, it's in the trash, that's jokes. And as you try and walk through the door, this dummy comes to life and gives you this big old story about how his cousin had like been talked to by a child, and it actually made him like escape the dummy and pass on to another form or something. So he was pissed and he got mad at us.
That's interesting that he activated as you walked out the door. My character went up to it and like I picked the option to just give it a punch because it's a dummy,
yeah.
and then it was like you reacted to that instead.
That's different strokes. I think you had to get this fight.
Yeah, okay. I was wondering whether that might have been a skippable one.
Yeah, no, well,
I
turns
got
out
my
it's not.
confirmation. Yeah.
And this mini boss is actually worth mentioning because you sort of get to his mini game bit and you can't actually fight him or directly attack him. You have to get his projectiles, which are homed onto you, and make them hit him.
That's
Which is
right.
an interesting mechanic.
That was the way I did it as well, yeah. It seemed like my attacks were mostly ineffective, and it seemed that this is kind of a bit of a late mechanic at this point, because I guess, I want to say we're probably about a third of the way into the game at this point.
That's
Maybe
probably
just
fair.
a little over a third. I think that this dummy, he reveals to you at some point that he's using magical attacks, and he makes it pretty apparent that he's only vulnerable to magic attacks, so you just use his own weapons against him.
But I thought it was just quite a neat little story boss, this.
Yeah. And again, another cool way of changing up the mechanics yet again in terms of what you have to do to avoid and attack enemies.
Yes, which I was actually quite thankful for, because I've got to say, to begin with, I found this game quite hard to get into because it was very simplistic.
It is,
So I was it's
Yeah.
like, if this is the whole game, like, this is really boring, basically. But we're sort of getting to the stage now. The Papyrus fight was really the first proper fight where I was like, okay, there's some cool mini games going on here that aren't
This isn't going to
super
be an easy ride.
Yeah. And then now, like, this one as well was like, this one was a bit more bullet helly. Like, there were some bits where it was like, okay, I really need to be on my game here to avoid everything. And worth noting, a lot of the enemies, the mini bosses and bosses especially, they got big health bars, and, you know, or you have to act or spare them for quite a few turns before you
Yeah.
finish the fight. So there's a lot of time for them to kill you.
You have opportunities to buy improved weapons in the game from various weird-looking merchants that you bump into as well. I assume you probably weren't engaging with that very much, given that you would never use the weapon.
No, I only use stuff I found.
So having beaten the mad possessed dummy, we continue on to the next area where we begin crossing a wooden bridge towards the next area. At this point, we meet the monster child once more, and after a short chat, he runs back across the bridge excitedly, but in his haste, he falls off the bridge.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Oh no!
Oh no!
Oh no! Oh yeah!
Clinging on for dear life, he calls out for help, and we have a choice to make. We can either save him or just walk off, escaping to safety away from Undyne.
And naturally, being the pacifist, I ran straight over to help this guy. He's been the cool little sort of, not quite friend, but a little companion to sort of join us. along the
Yeah,
way.
he's been kind of helping us along in our own way, keeping our resolve high.
Yeah, exactly. He's a good lad. And because I thought you were doing Genocide Run, I was really looking forward to seeing what you did here. Because I didn't know what the other option was. I didn't know if you would sort of get something different or if you could let him fall.
Whether the game would let the kid die, basically.
Yeah.
Whether, like, it would just, I don't know, Undyne would suddenly save the kid instead.
Yeah, I didn't know what that was going to be. But what did you actually end up doing?
Well, unfortunately, I can't tell you what the other side of the coin looked like in this one, James, because I'm not completely heartless. I did not, unfortunately, let the child die. So, you know.
I'm pleased, but it's very inconsistent.
You're pleased by my kind of my tick towards morality there. However, yes, I do agree. This has been basically monster people other than Papyrus get wrecked. Dogs and children are saved,
I can't blame you for not hurting the doggos because their sprites are adorable.
and Toriel got absolutely teabagged as well.
No, you teabagged your mum.
Stepmom, James. Stepmom. There's a
Oh, that's
difference.
fine
Haven't
then.
you
Yeah, that's-
seen the internet?
Yeah, I've seen like all that. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen all that.
Oh dear, but no. So well, that's great that we both saved the child. So then I guess we progressed into the next area because at this point Undyne sort of looked at us. Well, they certainly looked at me and just sort of walked off the other way. So oh yeah, you've saved the child. I'm going to let you have a little breather real quick because not long after that we do get into the Undyne fight, and this was the first fight where I sort of got like, okay, I really need to focus, have healing items in my inventory constantly, and be on my game.
100%. Oh man, I was smashing the pies for this boss fight to get that health back.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I only had like 3 or 4 healing items, so I had to be on point. Because even with like the sort of pacifist options, like I don't know how you did you. It's probably worth asking actually first. Did you fight Undyne? Did you kill Undyne?
I did fight and kill Undyne. I did. This was a pretty straightforward choice to make, seeing as this person had been constantly hunting after me, and yeah, I didn't really toss around this decision too much before I decided to just go ahead and fight her.
Yeah, and you see, logically speaking, I don't blame you. But being the pacifist, I had to do this, and really there wasn't a great deal I could do. I found myself just sort of running my wheels until I finally got the flee option, and then you run away, but then in the physical overworld you have to run away as well, and she chases you, but she still catches me like 4 times.
Fine.
And eventually I didn't actually end up killing her. What happens is you end up getting towards the bridge to the Hotlands, and you may have seen this, there's a water cooler.
Yes, yeah.
In that area, her armor gets so hot that she passes out and faints.
Oh, okay.
And what you have to do is you have to go to the water cooler, grab a glass of water and give it to her straight away. And then she just walks off. And
Right,
that's you
that was
sparing
what
her.
the water cooler was for.
That's what the water cooler's for, yeah.
Okay, because I just walked into the next area and it said that the water evaporated and so did the cup. somehow. But yeah.
Because if you're holding a water, yeah, because I tried to take it to the next area too, and it said exactly that, and I was like, that's jokes.
So at this point in the game, the child that we saved has sort of mentioned to us, and we're getting a slightly different perspective on things. It does seem that the child, at least, refers to Undyne as the hero that's always trying to save people. So it does seem quite a confusing juxtaposition against Undyne, the one that is hunting a small child using spears.
But it's really just because she's head of the Royal Guard and is being loyal, it turns out.
That's right.
Because after this, I saw her walk off, and I thought, I should go see what's up there. And I actually ended up, when I sort of backtracked a bit, I ended up finding her house, and Papyrus was there.
Ooh. What's Papyrus doing there? Is this where you got turned down?
No. He's there to train with Undyne.
Yeah.
Because he wants to be in the Royal Guard and she's captain of the Royal Guard.
Of course, yeah. It's one of his main aspirations.
And he convinces me to come into her house with him. And this was one of the funniest things, and this is one of the reasons I love Papyrus so much. He basically Undyne's like, I could never be friends with a human, and he basically challenges her and says, I bet you couldn't do it even if you wanted to. And therefore Undyne tries really hard to be our friend because she's so competitive. But to get out of it, Papyrus literally just for no reason, he's just like, oh yeah, I know, I'll leave you guys to it, bye, and just like jumps through her closed window, smashing the glass. It's just like, mate, the door's right there. And it's just so funny.
Classic Papyrus.
And that's actually just before she starts saying, anyway, I don't think I could ever be friends with a human. Then he comes back, pokes his head through the window, is like, oh, I bet you can't do it anyway. And then just walks off. So good. And you end up having a sort of play date with Undyne as well, where she tries to teach you how to cook, and it's great because she's just so aggressive with it. So I was being aggressive with it, and she's like, turn the stove up, it needs to be hotter. And it's just like, hotter! And you keep mashing A, and the flame just eventually, you burn her house down eventually.
Really? Okay.
But she loves it. She loves it. And she's
That's
like, oh, that was
great.
so passionate. And you become friends with Undyne as well.
That's making me think there's a little bit down the line where you encounter a snail race part and you need to mash a button to encourage your snail to race faster. What the game doesn't tell you, though, and obviously what you think to do, is mash the button as fast as you can, and if you do that very quickly, your snail, you'll notice it's slowing down and then suddenly bursting into flames.
Yeah.
And the person says that all that encouragement was actually too much for the snail, and we actually encouraged it to kind of go beyond what it was capable of doing, and its best just wasn't good enough.
Yeah. I see, I got there and I didn't actually do the snail race because it cost money.
Oh, right. I've been kind of chucking little bits of points away just because this game is so fun. I'm kind of happy to part with my shekels just to get a few extra kind of experiences in the game's humour.
Yeah, but you had more health than I did. I was spending
Yeah.
all of my money on health
Yeah,
potions and
yeah.
stuff like that. Like, I had 20 health for the whole run, which for context is maybe 3 shots later in the game. 3-4 shots.
That's
at most.
really tough, man. Well done.
It's really tough, yeah. It was painful. But yeah, it was a really nice little date. And I also got a little Undyne on top of my Papyrus on my loading screen at this point.
Oh,
too.
nice. Cool.
And worth noting as well, I never went on a date with Sans, but I had a little Sans in the top left as well.
Yeah, I wonder what you had to do to Sans to get that. Or maybe it's just
be
always
his mate.
there.
Maybe it's just be his mate. Maybe it's just always
Yeah.
there. Who knows? But having beaten Undyne, we head onwards to the next area, which is called the Hotlands, which we're not actually going to get into this week because that is where we're going to finish for this episode.
Ooh, suspense and yet another cliffhanger.
Will we escape? Will Will kill any more cute animals? All this and more next week. So with that, we come to the end of this week's episode of Total Pod Mode. Thank you very much for sticking with us through our first outing into Undertale. It's certainly an exciting little world. Let's see if there's any more twists and turns later in the tale.
Plenty of charm.
Plenty of charm indeed. But if you've enjoyed what you listened to, you can, as always, find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere else you get your podcasts by searching for Total Pod Mode.
We also post regular video content of our playthroughs, stream highlights, as well as the podcast on our YouTube channel, Total Pod Mode.
You can also find us on Twitter by searching for @TotalPodMode, all one word.
Or you can find me at Whodafunk on Twitter, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/Whodafunk.
And you can find me on Twitter @MrBames, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/MrBames_TPM. So with that, we leave you for another week. Listeners, take care. We'll see you next time.
Thanks very much, guys. See you next